So I'm curious, are you pure or are you damaged? Today we're here at Brendan Theaters watching Allegiant, the third movie in the Divergent series. I've been a big fan of this series. If you've been watching the channel and watching the reviews we do, you will have seen our reviews for the last two movies. If not, we'll have a link for that in the description. The last two movies I was a big fan of. This is a series that I've been invested in. I've really enjoyed it. Now I'm going to say this movie, in my opinion, is not the strongest of the three movies. It starts out a little slow for my taste. Normally I don't notice this, but in this movie I noticed some pretty shoddy special effects in the first half of the movie. It seemed like really obvious. Someone was standing in front of a green screen a couple times, and when that sticks out to me, you know it's really blaring, because normally I just look right past that and I'm so immersed in the movie. Now granted, there was a lot of special effects possible. It was just a budget constraint, because they really did have quite a task to uphold with all those special effects shots. Along the lines of each of the three movies, each movie seems to be really different. The first movie was very contained. The second movie kind of opens up a little bit in the scope, and then this movie just kind of blows the scope wide open, like global with it, I guess you can say. The idea of it getting bigger and bigger, I don't know if that's their way of trying to keep it fresh, but it felt like the stakes were super high because they needed the stakes to be higher than the last movie. No one's going to win any awards for the acting, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't like you roll your eyes when someone says something. It's the typical acting you see in the other two movies of this series. So I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. I do believe this is the weakest of the series, but I did still enjoy the movie. If you've seen the first two movies, you're going to want to see the third movie. Obviously, you want to see what happens to these characters. I'm hoping they continue it more. Time will tell. Let's see what our other Divergents had to say.
Comparisons obviously have to be made to some other young adult post-apocalyptic series, namely the Hunger Games and the Maze Runner series. I'm a fan of all three, but this probably falls third in terms of overall quality. The acting and general quality is not quite up to the Hunger Games level. The Maze Runner has a much faster pace. It's a little more action-oriented.
Not as big of a payoff as I had hoped. Some of the visual effects were, was this made 10 years ago? The story was slow-paced, but it kept me interested because these characters were going out and exploring territory. They didn't know what was out there, so we're learning as they're learning, and so that's what kept me awake and kept me paying attention. So I want to know. Other than that, there's nothing too special. Some of the plot is predictable.
One thing that sets this series apart from those other two is what I might call the graphics. There's a lot of really cool visual effects. They're a little different from film to film, but it sort of keeps you visually engaged. Sometimes you don't know if what you're watching is real or a fantasy or a dream. This one was a little lower on that scale compared to the first two movies. It was a lot more predictable, actually. That was probably my biggest complaint. I felt like I knew what was going to happen most of the time.
I think the only good actor in this was Jeff Daniels, because you could tell that the character, through very subtle performances, you could tell he was playing a character who was hiding something. All the other production values, set design, sound design, about what do you expect in this film? Nothing mind-blowing or suspenseful beyond what I expected.
It does pay off a few things from the first two films, namely, what's beyond the wall? We've wondered it since the first movie. In the second movie, you didn't know. Now we finally get to go outside that wall and find out what's out there. There's cliches. The adults are the bad ones, right? The grown-ups they're evil, and they're secretly doing things to like mess with all the cool young people. Obviously, all the young people are super hot, super attractive. So it's tough to get totally emotionally involved with these sort of models that are like, oh, my life is so difficult. I still enjoyed it overall, just not quite as much as the previous film.
I will say the second movie was the best as far as acting, plot, and visual effects especially. Visual effects were mind-blowing, number two. What happened here? Was it a different effects company, or were they just rushing it because they're like, all right, the second one was successful with the first one. Let's get the third one out. Hurry, hurry, hurry.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give it and why?
I'm going to give it a 7.5. I don't know what I gave the last one. Probably an 8.5 or 9. I'll laugh if I find out I gave the last one a lower score. But suffice to say, I like the second one better than the third one.
I'm going to have to give it a 6. It's not as good as the first two. I still think it's worth seeing if you enjoyed those first two movies. It does continue the story. You get a lot of the same characters are back, and some of them are really fun to watch and really fun to enjoy. Visually, it's a lot of fun to look at. You know, there's new things that we haven't seen. But in terms of the overall writing, plot, and some of the acting, really kind of drags it down. So overall, 6.
So I'm curious, what is your favorite post-apocalyptic teen film? Let us know in the comment section below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for reviews every week. And don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and share it with your friends. And remember, you heard it here at The Source.